You are standing at a crossroads right now. Every single day you wake up with a choice. You can continue living the same way you always have, or you can begin to shed the layers that have been keeping you small, keeping you stuck, keeping you from becoming the magnificent being you were meant to be. The spiritually awakened person understands something that most people never grasp. They understand that growth isn't about adding more to their lives. It's about taking away what doesn't serve them. It's about releasing, letting go, and creating space for the miraculous to enter. Today I want to share with you 7 things that every person on the path of spiritual awakening must slowly, gently, but surely release from their life. These aren't things you can eliminate overnight. They've been with you for years, maybe decades. They've become comfortable habits, familiar patterns, old friends that have overstayed their welcome. But here's what I know to be true. When you begin to let go of these 7 things, your life will transform in ways that will astound you. You'll find peace where there once was chaos. You'll find love where there once was fear. You'll find your true self where there once was only the mask you thought you had to wear. The first thing that spiritually awake people slowly quit is the need to be right all the time. Think about this for a moment. How much energy do you spend every day trying to prove that you're right? How many arguments do you get into? How many relationships do you strain because you simply cannot let someone else have their opinion without correcting them, without showing them where they're wrong? The need to be right is really the ego talking. It's that voice inside your head that says, if I'm not right, then I'm worthless. If I don't win this argument, then I'm less than. But what if I told you that being right isn't nearly as important as being happy? What if I told you that being right isn't nearly as valuable as being at peace? When you release the need to be right, something beautiful happens. You stop seeing other people as opponents and start seeing them as fellow travelers on this path called life. You stop needing to defend every little thing and start listening, really listening. And when you listen, you learn. When you listen, you grow. When you listen, you connect with others in a way that transforms both of you. I'm not saying you should become a doormat or that you should never stand up for what you believe in. What I'm saying is that you can choose your battles wisely. You can ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Is this worth damaging this relationship? Is this worth the stress I'm creating in my body and my mind? Most of the time the answer will be no. Most of the time you'll realize that being happy is so much more important than being right. And when you make that choice consistently, when you choose peace over being right, you'll find that your relationships improve dramatically. People will want to be around you because you're not constantly trying to correct them or prove them wrong. The second thing that spiritually awakened people slowly release is the addiction to approval from others. This is a big one, and it's something that most of us struggle with our entire lives. From the time we're children, we're taught to seek approval. We want our parents to approve of us. But here's the problem with living your life seeking approval from others. You're giving away your power. You're allowing other people to determine your worth. You're living your life according to what you think they want, instead of what you know is right for you. The truth is, you can never get enough approval to fill the hole inside you that craves it. There will always be someone who doesn't approve of your choices, your appearance, your beliefs, your lifestyle. If you're living for their approval, you'll spend your entire life chasing something that's constantly moving, constantly changing, constantly out of reach. When you begin to release the need for approval, you start living from your authentic self. You start making decisions based on what feels right to you, not what you think will make others happy. You start wearing what you want to wear, saying what you want to say, doing what you want to do, not because you're rebelling, but because you're finally being true to yourself. This doesn't mean you become selfish or inconsiderate. It means you stop betraying yourself to please others. It means you stop saying yes when you mean no. It means you stop pretending to be someone you're not just to fit in. The people who truly love you will love you for who you really are, not for who you pretend to be. The people who only love you when you're seeking their approval aren't really loving you at all. They're loving the version of you that makes them comfortable. So when you release the need for approval, you give others permission to do the same. You become a model for authentic living. You show others that it's possible to be yourself and still be loved, still be respected, still be valued. The third thing that spiritually conscious people slowly let go of is the habit of complaining. Complaining has become so normal in our society that we don't even realize we're doing it half the time. We complain about the weather, the traffic, the government, our jobs, our families, our health, our finances. We've made complaining a form of entertainment, a way to connect with others, a daily ritual. But complaining is one of the most destructive habits you can have. When you complain, you're focusing on what's wrong instead of what's right. You're putting your attention on problems instead of solutions. You're training your brain to look for the negative in every situation. What you focus on expands. When you spend your time complaining, you're actually creating more things to complain about. You're programming your mind to see problems everywhere. You're lowering your vibration and attracting more negativity into your life. Now, I'm not saying you should never acknowledge problems or challenges. I'm not saying you should pretend everything is perfect when it's not. What I'm saying is that there's a difference between acknowledging a problem and complaining about it. When you acknowledge a problem, you're taking the first step towards solving it. When you complain about a problem, you're just wallowing in it. When you acknowledge a challenge, you're empowering yourself to overcome it. When you complain about a challenge, you're making yourself a victim of it. Instead of complaining, try this. For every problem you identify, come up with at least one possible solution. For every challenge you face, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? How can this make me stronger, wiser, more compassionate? When you stop complaining and start looking for solutions, your entire life changes. You become a problem solver instead of a problem dweller. You become someone who creates positive change instead of someone who just talks about what's wrong. The fourth thing that awakened souls gradually release is the need to control everything and everyone around them. Control is an illusion, but it's an illusion that many of us cling to desperately. We think that if we can just control our circumstances, our relationships, our future, then we'll be safe, we'll be happy, we'll be secure. But the truth is, the only thing you can really control is yourself. You can't control what other people do, what they say, how they react, what they choose. You can't control the weather, the economy, natural disasters, or any of the countless variables that make up life. When you try to control things that are outside your control, you create stress, anxiety, and frustration for yourself. You waste enormous amounts of energy trying to manipulate situations and people instead of focusing on what you actually can influence. The need to control often comes from fear. We're afraid that if we don't control everything, something bad will happen. We're afraid that people will make choices we don't like. We're afraid that life won't unfold the way we think it should. But when you release the need to control, something magical happens. You start to trust. You start to have faith that things will work out, maybe not exactly as you planned, but in the way that's best for everyone involved. You start to see that there's a wisdom in life that's greater than your limited perspective. When you stop trying to control others, your relationships improve dramatically. People feel free to be themselves around you. They don't feel like they have to walk on eggshells or pretend to be someone they're not. They trust you because they know you're not trying to manipulate them or change them. When you stop trying to control circumstances, you become more adaptable, more resilient, more at peace. You learn to flow with life instead of fighting against it. You learn to find opportunity in unexpected situations. You learn to see challenges as chances to grow instead of as problems to solve. The fifth thing that spiritually aware people slowly quit is living in the past or the future instead of the present moment. Most of us spend very little time actually living in the now. We're either rehashing the past worrying about things that have already happened, feeling guilty about mistakes we made, or we're projecting into the future, worrying about things that might happen, planning for scenarios that may never come to pass. But life is happening right now. This moment is the only moment you actually have. The past is gone. You can't change it. The future hasn't happened yet. You can't control it. All you have is right now. And right now is where your power is. When you're constantly thinking about the past, you're missing out on the present. When you're always worried about the future, you're not fully experiencing what's happening now. You're living in your head instead of living your life. The present moment is where joy is found. It's where peace exists. It's where love lives. When you're fully present, you notice things you've been missing. You taste your food more fully. You hear music more clearly. You see beauty that was always there, but that you were too distracted to notice. Being present also means you're more effective in whatever you're doing. When your mind is scattered between the past and the future, your performance suffers. When you're fully focused on what you're doing right now, you do it better. You make fewer mistakes, you're more creative, you're more efficient. Learning to live in the present moment is a practice. It takes time to develop. You've probably spent years, maybe decades, living in your head, so it's going to take some effort to break that pattern. But every moment you spend fully present is a moment well lived. Start small. When you're eating, really taste your food. When you're walking, feel your feet on the ground. When someone's talking to you, really listen to their words instead of thinking about what you're going to say next. When you're in nature, take in the sights, sounds, and smells around you. The sixth thing that people on the spiritual path gradually let go of is the habit of judging others. Judgment is one of the most common and destructive habits we have. We judge people based on their appearance, their choices, their beliefs, their lifestyle. We create entire stories about people based on tiny pieces of information. But when you judge others, you're really revealing more about yourself than about them. Your judgments are based on your own experiences, your own fears, your own insecurities. They're not objective truths about the people you're judging. Judgment also separates you from others. When you judge someone, you're putting them in a category. You're making them different from you. You're creating distance between you and them. But the truth is, we're all much more alike than we are different. We all want to be loved. We all want to be understood. We all want to be valued. Everyone is fighting battles you know nothing about. Everyone has a story that has shaped who they are. Everyone has fears, hopes, dreams, and struggles. When you judge someone, you're ignoring their humanity. You're reducing them to a single characteristic or action. Instead of judging others, try to understand them. Try to see them with compassion. Try to remember that they're doing the best they can with what they have. This doesn't mean you have to agree with everyone or approve of everyone's choices. It just means you can see them as fellow human beings who are trying to figure out life just like you are. But when you stop judging others, you also stop judging yourself as harshly. The same voice that judges others is the voice that judges you. When you develop compassion for others, you develop compassion for yourself. When you see others with understanding, you see yourself with understanding. The seventh and final thing that spiritually awakened people slowly release is the belief that they are victims of their circumstances. This might be the most important one of all. As long as you see yourself as a victim, you're powerless. As long as you believe that your happiness, your success, your peace depends on external circumstances, you're at the mercy of a world you can't control. The victim mentality says, I can't be happy because of what happened to me. I can't succeed because of my background. I can't change because of my circumstances. But this is giving away all your power to external things and other people. Now, I'm not minimizing the real challenges and traumas that people face. I'm not saying that everyone has the same opportunities or that life is fair. What I'm saying is that regardless of what has happened to you, regardless of your current circumstances, you still have the power to choose your response. You can't always choose what happens to you, but you can always choose how you respond to what happens to you. You can choose your attitude, you can choose your perspective, you can choose your actions. You can choose whether to focus on what you've lost or what you still have. You can choose whether to see obstacles as roadblocks or as stepping stones. When you release the victim mentality, you reclaim your power. You stop waiting for someone else to rescue you and start rescuing yourself. You stop blaming others for your problems and start taking responsibility for your solutions. You stop looking outside yourself for happiness and start creating it from within. This doesn't happen overnight. If you've been thinking of yourself as a victim for years, it's going to take time to change that pattern. But every time you choose to take responsibility instead of blame, every time you choose to look for solutions instead of dwelling on problems, every time you choose to see opportunities instead of obstacles, you're moving away from victimhood and toward empowerment. The beautiful thing about releasing these 7 things is that you don't have to do it perfectly. You don't have to eliminate them from your life completely before you start seeing benefits. Every small step you take, every moment of awareness, every conscious choice to let go of what doesn't serve you moves you closer to the person you're meant to be. You might find that you make progress in one area and then slip back into old patterns. That's okay, that's normal. That's part of the process. The key is to be gentle with yourself, to be patient with yourself, to remember that change takes time. Some days you'll remember to stay present, and other days you'll find yourself lost in worry about the future. Some days you'll choose peace over being right, and other days you'll get caught up in an argument. Some days you'll take responsibility for your life, and other days you'll slip into victim thinking. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. The goal is awareness. The goal is to catch yourself more quickly when you fall into these old patterns and to choose differently. As you begin to release these 7 things, you'll notice changes in your life that might surprise you. Your relationships will improve because you're no longer trying to control or judge the people around you. Your stress levels will decrease because you're no longer fighting reality or trying to be right all the time. Your happiness will increase because you're no longer depending on external approval or circumstances for your peace. You'll also find that you have more energy. These 7 habits are incredibly draining. When you're constantly trying to control everything, judge everyone, complain about everything, prove you're right, seek approval, live in the past or future, and see yourself as a victim, you're using up enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy. When you release these habits, you free up that energy for things that actually matter. You can use it to create, to love, to grow, to contribute. You can use it to pursue your dreams, to build meaningful relationships, to make a positive difference in the world. You'll also find that you become more attractive to other people. Not necessarily in a physical sense, although that might happen too, but in an energetic sense. People are naturally drawn to those who are at peace with themselves, who don't need to prove anything, who don't judge others, who take responsibility for their own lives. When you embody these qualities, you become a source of inspiration for others. You show them what's possible. You give them permission to let go of their own limiting patterns. You become a light in a world that often seems dark. The path of spiritual awakening isn't always easy. It requires you to look at yourself honestly, to acknowledge patterns that aren't serving you, to make changes that might feel uncomfortable at first. It requires you to let go of familiar ways of thinking and being, even when those ways have become like old friends. But the rewards are beyond measure. When you live from this awakened place, when you've released these 7 things that keep most people stuck, you experience a peace that passes understanding. You experience joy that doesn't depend on circumstances. You experience love that flows freely from your heart to everyone you meet. And you realize that you were never broken to begin with, you were never lacking, you were never less than enough, you were just covered up by layers of conditioning, layers of fear, layers of false beliefs about who you had to be to survive in this world. As you peel away these layers, as you release what doesn't serve you, your true self begins to shine through. And your true self is magnificent. Your true self is wise. Your true self is loving. Your true self is peaceful. Your true self is everything you've been seeking outside yourself. The process of awakening is really a process of remembering who you really are beneath all the roles you play, all the masks you wear, all the strategies you've developed to get through life. You're remembering that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, not a human being trying to have a spiritual experience. This remembering changes everything. When you know who you really are, you don't need others to validate you. When you know your true nature, you don't need to control everything around you. When you know your worth, you don't need to prove you're right. When you know your power, you don't see yourself as a victim. The 7 things I've shared with you today are really just symptoms of forgetting who you are. When you remember, when you wake up to your true nature, these things naturally fall away. They lose their grip on you because they no longer serve the person you know yourself to be. Be patient with yourself as you walk this path. Be gentle with yourself as you learn to let go. Remember that every master was once a beginner. Every person who seems to have it all figured out was once where you are now, taking the first steps toward awakening. The fact that you're here, the fact that you're listening to these words, the fact that something inside you is stirring and wanting to change tells me that you're ready. You're ready to release what's been holding you back. You're ready to step into who you're meant to be. You're ready to wake up to the magnificent being you've always been. Trust the process, trust yourself, trust that life is supporting your awakening in ways you might not even be able to see yet, and know that every step you take toward releasing these 7 things is a step toward the freedom, peace, and joy that are your birthright. Your awakening doesn't just benefit you, it benefits everyone whose life you touch. When you stop judging, you give others permission to be themselves. When you stop trying to control, you allow others to find their own way. When you stop complaining, you inspire others to look for solutions. When you take responsibility for your life, you show others that they can do the same. You become a force for good in this world, not by trying to change everyone else, but by changing yourself. You become a beacon of hope, not by preaching to others, but by living the truth you've awakened to. You become a teacher, not by telling others what to do, but by showing them what's possible. This is the path of the spiritually awakened person. This is the journey from unconsciousness to consciousness, from fear to love, from separation to unity, from victimhood to empowerment. It's the most important journey you'll ever take. And it starts with a single step. Today, right now, in this moment, you can take that step. You can choose to release just one of these 7 things. You can choose to respond differently the next time someone disagrees with you. You can choose to catch yourself the next time you start complaining. You can choose to stay present for just one conversation today. Small steps lead to big changes. Consistent choices create lasting transformation. And every moment offers you a fresh opportunity to choose differently, to be different, to live from the awakened place within you that has been waiting patiently for you to remember who you really are. The time is now. The person is you. The path is before you. All that's required is the willingness to let go of what no longer serves you and to embrace the magnificent being you were born to be. Your awakening is not just possible, it's inevitable. The question is not if, but when, and I believe that when is now. As you continue on this path of awakening, you'll begin to notice something beautiful happening in your daily life. The ordinary moments start to feel extraordinary. A simple conversation with a stranger becomes an opportunity for connection. A sunset that you might have rushed past before now stops you in your tracks with its beauty. The laughter of a child reminds you of the joy that exists in pure presence. This transformation happens because you're no longer filtering everything through the lens of these 7 limiting patterns. You're not constantly evaluating whether someone approves of you so you can actually see them for who they are. You're not trying to control the outcome of every interaction so you can be genuinely curious about what unfolds. You're not judging everyone you meet so you can appreciate their unique gifts and perspectives. When you live this way, you start to see synchronicities everywhere. The right book falls into your hands at exactly the right moment. You run into someone who has exactly the information you need. Opportunities appear that seem almost too perfect to be coincidence. This isn't magic, although it might feel like it. This is what happens when you align with the flow of life instead of fighting against it. Your intuition becomes stronger and clearer. When you're not constantly caught up in mental chatter about what went wrong yesterday or what might go wrong tomorrow, you create space for your inner wisdom to speak. You start to trust that quiet voice inside you that knows things your logical mind hasn't figured out yet. You make decisions that feel right in your gut, even when you can't explain why. Relationships take on a completely different quality. When you're not trying to get anything from other people, when you're not trying to change them or fix them or impress them, you can simply enjoy them for who they are. You become genuinely interested in their stories, their dreams, their challenges. You listen not to respond but to understand. You love not to possess but to appreciate. This shift in how you relate to others creates a ripple effect that extends far beyond your immediate circle. Children feel safer around you because they sense your authenticity. Animals are drawn to your peaceful energy. Even strangers seem more open and friendly when they encounter you. You realize that who you are being affects everyone around you in ways you might never fully understand. Your creativity blossoms in ways you never expected. When you're not spending all your mental energy on worry, control, judgment, and the need to be right, that energy becomes available for creative expression. You might find yourself writing, painting, singing, dancing, or creating in ways you haven't since you were a child. You rediscover the joy of creating something just for the pure pleasure of creating it. Your work life transforms as well. Whether you're in the same job or you find yourself drawn to something completely different, you approach your work from a new perspective. You're not working just to get approval or to prove your worth. You're contributing your gifts to the world. You're serving others through your unique talents and abilities. Work becomes less about what you get and more about what you give. Money takes on a different meaning too. You realize that your security doesn't come from your bank account but from your connection to the infinite abundance of the universe. This doesn't mean you become careless with money or that you don't need to be practical. It means you don't live in fear about money. You trust that when you're living from your authentic self, when you're contributing your gifts to the world, you'll be supported. Your physical health often improves when you release these 7 patterns. Stress is one of the biggest contributors to illness, and these patterns create enormous amounts of stress in your body. When you stop fighting with reality, when you stop needing to control everything, when you stop judging and complaining, your body relaxes. Your immune system strengthens. You sleep better. You have more energy. You might also find that you naturally make healthier choices without forcing yourself. When you're living from your authentic self, you naturally want to treat your body well. You eat foods that nourish you, not to punish yourself or because you should, but because you love yourself enough to care for the vessel that carries you through this life. The relationship you have with yourself becomes the foundation for everything else in your life. When you're not constantly seeking approval from others, you learn to approve of yourself. When you're not judging others, you stop being so harsh with yourself. When you take responsibility for your life instead of seeing yourself as a victim, you empower yourself to create the life you want. Self-care becomes a natural expression of self-love rather than something you have to force yourself to do. You take time for solitude not because you're running away from the world, but because you enjoy your own company. You say no to things that drain your energy, not because you're being selfish, but because you understand that taking care of yourself allows you to show up better for others. Your spiritual practice, whatever form it takes, becomes less about following rules or doing things perfectly and more about connecting with something greater than yourself. Whether you pray, meditate, spend time in nature, or simply sit in silence, these moments become precious opportunities to remember who you really are beneath all the roles and responsibilities. You begin to see the sacred in the ordinary. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on gratitude for having food to eat and dishes to eat from. Waiting in line becomes an opportunity to practice patience and presence. Traffic jams become chances to listen to music you love or to appreciate the engineering marvel of the roads and cars around you. As your perspective shifts, you realize that every experience, even the difficult ones, has been serving your growth in some way. The job you hated taught you what you don't want and pointed you toward what you do want. The relationship that ended painfully taught you about your own patterns and helped you develop compassion. The financial struggles taught you about resourcefulness and gratitude. This doesn't mean you become grateful for suffering or that you believe everything happens for a reason in some predetermined way. It means you develop the ability to find meaning and growth opportunities in whatever life presents to you. You become resilient, not because you're tough, but because you're flexible. You bend with life's storms instead of breaking. Your compassion extends not just to other people, but to all of life. You see the interconnectedness of everything. You understand that harming others ultimately harms yourself, and that healing yourself contributes to the healing of the world. You make choices that consider not just your immediate needs, but the needs of future generations and the planet that supports all life. This expanded awareness brings with it a sense of responsibility, but it's not a heavy burden. It's the joyful responsibility of someone who has found their place in the grand symphony of existence and wants to play their part beautifully. You contribute to the world not because you have to, but because you can't help but overflow with the love and wisdom you cultivated within yourself. The changes that occur as you release these 7 patterns happen gradually, like the slow turning of seasons. One day you realize that you haven't complained about anything in weeks. Another day you notice that you stayed completely present during an entire conversation. Gradually you discover that you're responding to challenges with curiosity instead of resistance, with trust instead of fear. People around you might not understand the changes they see in you. Some might even feel threatened by your peace, because it highlights their own inner turmoil. Some might try to pull you back into old patterns of drama, gossip, or negativity. Remember that this is not about them. This is their own fear of change, their own attachment to familiar patterns, even when those patterns cause suffering. Stay true to your path. Be patient with those who don't understand. Love them anyway. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is simply being a living example of what's possible. Your peace becomes their invitation. Your joy becomes their hope. Your authenticity becomes their permission to be real too. The awakening process is not linear. You don't graduate from one level to the next and never look back. There will be days when old patterns resurface. There will be times when you catch yourself complaining, judging, trying to control, or seeking approval. When this happens, don't judge yourself for it. Simply notice it, smile at yourself with compassion, and choose differently. Each time you catch yourself and choose differently, you're strengthening new neural pathways in your brain. You're literally rewiring your consciousness. Every moment of awareness is a victory. Every choice to respond differently is a step toward freedom. Every act of self-compassion is an act of healing, not just for yourself, but for the collective consciousness of humanity. I remember that awakening is not a destination you reach and then you're done. It's an ongoing process of becoming more conscious, more loving, more authentic, more free. It's a lifetime practice of returning again and again to your true self whenever you notice you've wandered away. The 7 things you're releasing were never who you really are. They were learned responses, survival strategies, adaptations to a world that sometimes felt unsafe or unwelcoming. As you let them go, you're not losing anything important. You're uncovering the diamond that was always there beneath the dust. You're remembering the song you came here to sing. You're awakening to the love you came here to be.
There's a river that runs through you, not a river of water, but of energy, of spirit, eternal, quiet, and profoundly alive. You were born into this stream not to grasp at the banks, not to cling to the rocks, but to flow effortlessly with the current of life. And yet, so many of us have forgotten. We hold on. We resist. We clutch stories and identities and pains like anchors tied to our ankles. We cling to the past, to expectations, to control, to what they said or didn't say, did or didn't do. We tighten our fists around things that are already floating downstream, believing that somehow in our clenching, we are safe. But the soul doesn't cling. The soul flows. The ego clings, that manufactured identity born of comparison and separation. It clings because it fears dissolving. It clings because it believes in lack. It clings because it has been conditioned to survive by controlling, by proving, by protecting a fragile sense of self built entirely on illusion. But the soul knows it cannot be harmed. The soul knows it was never lacking. The soul knows it doesn't need to become anything because it already is everything. It simply flows like wind through trees, like breath in the lungs, like love that does not demand anything in return. When you wake up to this truth, not as a concept, but as a felt reality, you begin to see how much energy has been wasted in holding on to what hurt you, holding on to who hurt you, holding on to who you used to be or who you think you need to become. It is all weight, it is all unnecessary. It is all the ego's attempt to control what the soul already understands, that everything is impermanent, and that impermanence is not the enemy, but the gateway to liberation. You do not need to carry what no longer serves you, not because it is wrong, not because it is bad, but because it is heavy. You were not made for heaviness. You were not made for tightness. You were not made to grasp. You were made to expand, to evolve, to become soft and supple and surrendered to the mysterious rhythm of life. You were made to flow. And flowing is not weakness. It is not passive. It is the most powerful act of trust. It is the choice to no longer resist the current of your own evolution. It is the courage to let go of the known and surrender to the vastness of the unknown. It is the decision to stop trying to control outcomes and start honoring alignment. It is the daily sacred practice of asking, where is life trying to take me, and am I willing to go? So ask yourself now, what are you clinging to? What story? What identity? What memory? What resentment? What version of yourself have you outgrown, but are still performing because it's familiar? And what would it feel like just for a moment to loosen your grip, to unclench your mental fists and allow life to move through you, not around you? Because here's the truth. When you release the need to control, you become available to grace. When you let go, you don't fall, you rise. You rise into the higher frequency of your own being. You rise into the flow state of the soul. You rise into a rhythm that is not frantic or forceful, but deeply peaceful, deeply wise, deeply loving. There is a quiet confidence in those who flow. They do not need to prove, they do not need to rush, they are not seduced by urgency or pressure. They move from presence. They listen to the whispers beneath the noise. They trust the signs. They walk away when it's time. They stay when it's true. They live not by force, but by alignment. You were never meant to swim against the current of your own truth. And what is your truth? That you are not the stories you've been telling yourself. You are not your wounds. You are not your resume or your failures or your reputation. You are not the name they gave you or the roles you were assigned. You are something far more eternal. A soul here for a fleeting moment, learning to remember who you are. And in remembering, you heal. You heal not by adding more to yourself, but by releasing what is not you. You don't become whole by accumulation. You become whole by subtraction. Letting go of the fear, letting go of the shame, letting go of the need for validation, letting go of the timelines, letting go of the weight. You don't need it anymore. You never did. Flowing means saying yes to your own becoming. It means no longer holding yourself hostage to a version of you that was necessary for survival but is no longer aligned with who you're becoming. It means trusting that what is meant for you will never require you to shrink, to strive, or to betray your own peace. Flowing means releasing the people who cannot meet you where you're going, not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with deep gratitude for what they showed you and a quiet bow as you both continue your separate ways. Flowing means grieving what has ended, but not dragging the corpse with you. Flowing means allowing the space in your life to be empty for a while, not rushing to fill it with noise, distraction, or new attachments, but trusting that the empty space is sacred, that the void is the womb of your next becoming, That silence is not absence, but presence preparing you for more. So often we say we want peace, but we are unwilling to release the chaos. We say we want to be free, but we are addicted to our chains. We say we want to flow, but we grip the riverbanks with white knuckles. The soul waits patiently, never pushing, never punishing, just whispering gently, let go, let it flow, I know the way. And when you finally listen, when you finally soften, when you finally surrender, everything changes. Not because the world has changed, but because your inner world is no longer resisting the current of life. You stop trying to swim upstream. You stop arguing with reality. You stop fighting your own expansion. And in that stillness, in that surrender, you remember you were always the river. You were always the flow. You were never the rock. There is a sacred intelligence flowing through all of life, an unspoken harmony that arranges galaxies and opens flowers, that carries the tide and breathes your lungs without needing permission. That same force flows through you. It's not something you must earn. It's not something that depends on your achievements or your past. It is your nature. The soul is not something you possess, it is what you are. And the soul knows how to flow because it is not bound by ego. It does not confuse stillness with stagnation. It does not mistake letting go for losing. It sees the truth clearly, that everything you're afraid of losing was never truly yours, only borrowed for a time, a teacher in disguise, a season in the symphony of your evolution. The ego builds walls, but the soul opens windows. The ego fears death, but the soul knows only transformation. The ego asks, what will they think? The soul asks, what is true for me? And you must decide, moment by moment, breath by breath, whose voice you will follow. Do you want a life that clings or a life that flows? Clinging says, I am not enough, so I must hold on to this person, this job, this image, this pain, or I will disappear. Flowing says, I'm already whole, so I trust that what leaves is no longer aligned and what comes is already mine in spirit. One is fear masquerading as love. The other is love, pure and unshaken by circumstance. Let this moment be the moment you come back to yourself. Back to the still, wise, unshakable presence beneath the noise of your mind. Back to the space where you don't need to prove anything. Where you don't need to fix yourself. Where you don't need to get somewhere else. Back to the simple, sacred truth. You are already held. You are already guided. You are already flowing. When you stop trying to be the river and allow yourself to become the water, you cannot flow while clinging, and you cannot cling while flowing. The soul invites you into a different kind of power, not the kind that forces outcomes or dominates others, but the kind that rises from radical trust. Trust that what is falling away is making space. Trust that what didn't work was never meant to last. Trust that the timing is perfect, even when it makes no sense to the mind. Trust that something ancient and eternal is always on your side, even when life feels like unraveling. Especially then, there is beauty in the unraveling. There is grace in the undoing. There is peace in the pause between chapters. And when you stop resisting that space, when you stop trying to rush through the uncomfortable unknown, you will feel something holy begin to open. The weight will lift. The breath will deepen. The tears will soften into prayers. The fight will dissolve into presence. And presence, my friend, is the doorway to the soul. When you are fully here, not regretting the past or rehearsing the future, you remember the only thing that has ever been real, this moment, this breath, this now. And in that now, the need to cling dissolves. Because you see, there is nothing to cling to. There is only this infinite moment of becoming. This is the invitation. This is the path. This is the liberation. To trust your flow more than you trust your fear. Your pain has shaped you, but it does not define you. Your story is sacred, but it is not your prison. You are not bound to what once broke you. You are not required to relive what you've already outgrown. You can thank the past for its lessons and then let it go. Not because you're denying it, but because you're no longer choosing to suffer under its weight. The past is not your home. The soul lives forward. You are not meant to stay where your spirit has already left. You are not meant to dwell in spaces that no longer resonate. You are not meant to repeat patterns that keep you small. You are not meant to make yourself digestible to those who cannot taste the truth of your being. You are not meant to betray your own peace for the comfort of others. You are meant to flow. And to flow, you must trust that letting go is not the end, it is the beginning. The soul doesn't cling to roles, titles, outcomes, or attachments. It doesn't demand proof. It simply flows faithfully, naturally, freely with the source from which it came. You are that source in form. You are that eternal presence expressing itself in a human lifetime. You are not separate from the divine. You are a unique, unrepeatable current in the ocean of God. And when you stop resisting that current, you return home to your deepest truth. I am not this fear. I am not this grasping. I am not this control. I am the one who watches it all come and go, untouched and unafraid. Flowing is not about giving up. It is about giving in. Not to weakness, but to wisdom. Not to chaos, but to the deeper order. Not to apathy, but to alignment. It is the realization that the more tightly you hold on, the more you suffer. And the more you surrender, the more you see life was never working against you. It was always working for your awakening. So breathe, soften, listen, let go of your agenda for a moment and ask the deeper question, what is life trying to show me? Where is it trying to lead me? What truth have I been avoiding? And what would happen if I simply said yes? This is not the path of the world. It is the path of the soul. It is slower, deeper, quieter, but it is also more powerful. It doesn't rush to fix. It doesn't cling to old maps. It doesn't need guarantees. It simply flows because it trusts. And as you begin to live from this place, your life changes. Not always in visible ways, but in foundational ways. You feel lighter, you react less, you forgive more easily, you stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand. You find peace in solitude. You let love find you instead of chasing it. You speak your truth, not to convince, but because it's who you are. You live not from fear, but from freedom. And this is the deepest freedom, not the freedom to control everything, but the freedom from the need to let that be enough for now. Let it be enough to breathe. Let it be enough to not know what's next, but to trust that something sacred is unfolding. Let it be enough to release what you were never meant to carry. Let it be enough to simply return to the flow again and again, as many times as you need. You are not late, you are not behind, you are not broken, you are not too much or not enough. You are exactly where your soul needs you to be learning, shedding, remembering, returning. Because you've never truly left. You've only been distracted. You've only been afraid. You've only been trying to manage a river that was always here to carry you. But now you remember. Now you feel it rising in you. The call to flow, the whisper to let go, the sacred courage to stop clinging and start living fully, freely, fearlessly. Flowing is a remembrance, not a destination. You don't become worthy of it, you return to it. It's what you were before they told you who to be, before the world wrapped its labels around your light, before you learned to perform for approval or to hide your wounds beneath a polished smile. The flow was always there beneath the striving, beneath the shame, beneath the noise. It's the you that exists when there's nothing to prove, nothing to defend, nothing to cling to, just presence, just love, just the gentle, patient rhythm of your soul moving in time with the infinite. When you stop trying to carry the weight of your entire life on your shoulders, something holy happens. You begin to feel the hands of the divine beneath you, invisible, steady, holding you even when you can't see them. You stop gripping so tightly to outcomes, and you start trusting in the unfolding. You stop trying to make people stay, and you start honoring the way love expands when it's not possessed. You stop controlling the narrative, and you start living the truth. This is not complacency. This is not apathy. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is the deepest courage there is, to trust your inner knowing more than external noise, to walk away when it dishonors your soul, to release what you've outgrown, even when your hands shake, to say yes to the quiet, sacred, unglamorous process of healing without needing applause, to no longer make decisions from fear, but from the freedom of your spirit. You are not here to be weighed down by old stories. You are not here to live in someone else's version of who you should be. You are not here to repeat ancestral patterns of suffering because you think pain is noble. You are here to break the cycle, to breathe a new breath, to say, it ends with me, not in anger, not in pride, but in clarity, in peace, in love. You are here to choose differently. And every moment offers that choice, to cling or to flow, to resist or to surrender, to live from fear or from freedom. Some days you will forget. That's okay. Some days the grip will tighten again around your expectations, your history, your identity. But each time, the soul will gently remind you, you don't need to hold on. You are held. You don't need to carry it. You are carried. Letting go is not an event, it is a practice, a returning, a loosening, a remembering that the more you allow, the more you align, the more you trust, the more you transform. The more you flow, the more you heal, not by fixing anything, but by finally realizing that nothing essential was ever broken. You are not here to become someone else. You are here to unbecome everything that was never really you. Peel it back. The guilt, the people-pleasing, the perfectionism, the pressure to perform, the need to be understood by everyone, the urge to keep proving your worth. Let it all drop away. Strip yourself of everything that doesn't feel like truth. Watch how light you become when you stop dragging what you were never meant to carry. This is the miracle of flowing. It clears the space for the real you to emerge. Not the wounded self, not the performing self, not the pleasing self, the soul self, the one who trusts timing, the one who lives in presence, the one who doesn't argue with reality, the one who breathes deeply and walks lightly because they've realized that nothing real can be lost and nothing unreal is worth holding on to. And so the healing continues. It deepens. It doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't come with fireworks or grand revelations. Sometimes it's a quiet shift, the moment you don't react to the old trigger, the moment you choose silence over defending yourself, the moment you let someone go without needing closure. That's healing. That's flow. And you begin to realize that you are no longer in a rush. You are no longer desperate for answers. You are no longer searching for validation in eyes that do not know how to see you. You are no longer willing to abandon yourself for love. You are no longer willing to distort your truth just to be accepted. You flow now. You honor the rhythm of your own soul. You listen, not to the fear in your head, but to the knowing in your heart. You allow others to think what they think. You allow life to unfold in its own timing. You allow the unknown to be not a threat, but a temple. You are becoming free, not because the world has changed, but because you have. Because you no longer seek to control what cannot be controlled. Because you no longer fear the silence. Because you no longer need to carry every burden alone. Because you have remembered the sacred truth. The soul doesn't cling, it flows. And in that flowing, you begin to see others differently too. You stop demanding that they stay the same. You stop needing them to complete you. You stop blaming them for your wounds. You stop trying to convince, convert, or change them. You begin to love in a new way, not from need, but from overflow. Not from fear, but from freedom. Not to fill a hole, but to share your wholeness. You forgive, not to let them off the hook, but to unhook yourself from the chain of suffering. You release, not because you don't care, but because you've decided to care for your peace more than your pride. You walk away when needed, not in anger, but in truth. You stay when aligned, not out of fear, but out of love. This is the work of the soul. Not to fight, but to flow. Not to conquer, but to remember. Not to cling, but to let the river carry you home. And the more you do this, the more you will find that what is meant for you doesn't require effort to hold. It fits, it resonates, it flows with you. The people, the opportunities, the visions, they feel light, they feel aligned, they feel like truth. And those that don't, you bless them and release them. No resistance, no resentment, just clarity, just grace. You are not here to suffer. You are not here to earn love. You are not here to be everything for everyone. You are here to embody your soul. And the soul is not in a hurry. It is not in panic. It is not at war. It is water. It is wind. It is light. And it knows the way. Every moment you let go, something within you softens. The heart opens. The breath deepens. You begin to feel again not the sharpness of suffering, but the quiet pulse of aliveness. And in that aliveness, you meet yourself. Not the idea of you, not the projection, but the real you, the ancient you, the unshakable you. The one who has walked through fire and still chooses grace. The one who has lost so much and yet still sings. The one who has broken, bent, wept, crawled, and yet never forgot the truth, no matter how dim it became in the noise of the world. And the truth is this: you are not your trauma. You are not your past. You are not your wounds. You are the presence that witnessed it all. You are the light that survived. You are the consciousness that continues to rise. Your soul doesn't cling to pain because your soul knows pain is not your identity. Your soul doesn't cling to success because your soul knows success is not your worth. Your soul doesn't cling to certainty because your soul knows that life is never meant to be figured out. It's meant to be felt, danced, lived, flowed with. You begin to understand, not just mentally, but with your whole being. Resistance is the only thing that hurts. Not the event, not the loss, not the ending, the resistance to it, the refusal to let it move through you. The clinging to the idea that it should have been different. The obsession with rewriting the past in your mind. The ego screams, it wasn't supposed to be this way. But the soul whispers, it was. It had to be. Not as punishment, as preparation. Preparation for what? For this sacred moment of awakening, this sacred return to yourself, this sacred choice to no longer live in bondage to the past, this sacred breath of surrender, this sacred decision to let life love you without needing you to control it. You see, now peace is not found in fixing, it is found in flowing. It is not found in having all the answers. It is found in becoming the space where the answers can land. And that space is still. That space is soft. That space is unclenched, unarmored, unafraid. So many of us carry invisible armor. We tighten around life, bracing for impact. We anticipate rejection. We rehearse abandonment. We prepare for loss. We protect ourselves from the very experiences that would set us free. But freedom never comes through defense. Freedom comes through openness, through willingness, through flow. Drop the armor now. It is not needed here. You are safe to be soft. You are safe to be open. You are safe to let go. And yes, your mind will tell you that to flow is to risk everything, that if you surrender, you'll fall apart. But the soul knows what falls apart is only what was never true to begin with. Let the false self unravel, let the story dissolve, let the illusion burn. You are not here to live a tightly controlled life. You are here to live a truthful life. And truth has no need for clinging. You don't have to force what's meant for you. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to hold on to love with a white-knuckle grip. Love that is real doesn't need to be caged. It flows to you freely as an echo of your own alignment. This is the shift. This is the healing. This is the moment you become new, not by becoming someone else, but by shedding the untrue. And the world around you begins to mirror this. You attract with ease what you used to chase. You release what no longer resonates without fear. You speak your truth with clarity and softness. You stop asking, will they accept me? And start asking, am I accepting myself? Because the soul doesn't seek approval. It lives in integrity. And that integrity is not perfection. It's not a curated image. It's the quiet knowing that you are who you say you are, even when no one is watching. It's the soft power of being at home in your own spirit. It's the lightness of not needing to cling to masks. You are returning to that now, and in your return, you heal. You heal generations of suppression. You heal lifetimes of clinging. You heal the fractured relationship between your mind and your essence. Because flowing is not just personal, it is sacred. It is ancestral. It is collective. When you choose to flow, you liberate others. When you let go, you give others permission to do the same. When you live in presence, you become a lighthouse for those still lost in the storm of control. You don't need to save anyone. Your light is the invitation. Your flow is the medicine. So don't be afraid of the emptiness that comes when you let go. That emptiness is not void. It is space. It is room for the real to emerge. It is the fertile ground of transformation. And in that ground, new life will grow. Not because you forced it, not because you planned it, but because you became available to it. You flowed, and now you see that nothing real is ever lost, that what was taken was only ever borrowed, that what fell away was only meant to walk you to the threshold of your deeper becoming, that every detour was a necessary redirection, that every heartbreak was a holy invitation, that every ending was really a beginning dressed in silence. You see that clinging never protected you, it only exhausted you. You see that control was a disguise for fear. You see that your safety has never been in the known, but in the truth. You see that love, real love, never requires you to abandon yourself. And so you choose again and again to flow, not perfectly, not always easily, but honestly, gently, wholeheartedly. Because flowing is not about being above pain. It's about not becoming it. It's about allowing yourself to feel fully, vulnerably, without letting that feeling become your identity. It's about meeting yourself where you are while still trusting where you're going. It's about no longer carrying yesterday's weight into tomorrow's miracle. Then let us close, softly and clearly, like the last ripple of a river disappearing into the sea. You are not here to grasp. You are not here to control the current. You are not here to rewrite the past or manipulate the future. You are here to be, to open, to breathe, to allow the mystery to move through you like a sacred wind, to become so light that nothing sticks, nothing stains, nothing steals your peace. Flowing doesn't mean nothing matters. It means you no longer suffer unnecessarily over what does. Let the world change. Let people leave. Let dreams evolve. Let chapters close. Let the self you once were dissolve into the self you're becoming. Let it all move. Let it all flow. Because the soul doesn't cling. It flows. It trusts. It breathes. It loves. And it remembers always that nothing real can ever be lost. And neither can you. You are the river. Now flow. There will come a time in your life when the mirror can no longer lie to you. A moment when you no longer rush to your reflection seeking approval, validation, or some borrowed beauty reflected back from the gaze of someone else. A moment when the echo of all your chasing
will meet the silence of your soul, and in that silence, you'll remember you've been seeking in the wrong direction all along. You weren't meant to beg for love. You were born to be it. Love, in its truest form, has never been something to earn or plead for. It is not something that gets traded, bartered, or handed out by someone else like a reward. It is not measured by attention or withheld like punishment. Love is not a performance. It is not a negotiation. It is your origin. It is your essence. It is what you are, beneath the noise, beyond the past, before the wounds were even named. You are not missing love. You are missing the awareness that it has always been within you. Every time you search for it in someone else's approval, you abandon the infinite source already pulsing quietly in your own heart. Every time you begged for someone to stay, you forgot that no one leaves you but your own belief, that you needed them to complete you. No one can abandon you except the version of yourself that was never truly you. We live in a world obsessed with finding the one. But what if the one you were meant to find was yourself? Not the version shaped by society, not the identity patched together from rejection, comparison, and shame, but the soul underneath the timeless being who came into this life whole, radiant, and completely free. The real tragedy is not that others fail to love us. The real tragedy is when we fail to remember that we never needed them to. Your soul did not incarnate to earn love. Your soul came to express it. You are not here to be chosen. You are here to awaken to the truth that you were never unchosen in the first place. There is nothing to prove, nothing to strive for. You don't need to impress, seduce, or convince anyone of your worth, because your worth is not a question. It is the answer. It is the constant. It is the silent light that has never left you. So why do we beg? Why do we lower our voice, dim our light, twist ourselves into shapes just to be accepted? It is because somewhere along the way we were taught to believe that love is conditional, that it is scarce, that it must be earned by pleasing, performing, or pretending. And in doing so, we abandoned our own power. We handed our divine worth over to the fickle opinions of the world, forgetting that no one can truly love you until you love yourself enough to stop seeking their permission to exist. To beg for love is to forget who you are. It is to kneel before illusions and ask them to define you. It is to place your sacred identity into the hands of someone else's broken perception. And let me be clear, no matter how loving someone else may be, they cannot give you what you've denied yourself. Even the purest love cannot fill a soul that has become a stranger to itself. You cannot drink from someone else's cup and expect it to quench the thirst of your own inner emptiness. That thirst must be met at the well of your own soul. Healing begins the moment you stop outsourcing your self-worth. The moment you stop performing for love like a child on a stage and instead sit quietly with yourself and ask, what am I still trying to earn that was already mine when I arrived? What am I still chasing that I've never actually lost? Who taught me that love had to come from out there? You see, every time you choose yourself truly, wholly, unapologetically, you are no longer asking others to do what you are now doing for yourself. And when that happens, something powerful is set in motion. The love you give yourself becomes a frequency, a signal, a divine mirror. And everything in the universe begins to reflect that vibration back to you, not because you demanded it, but because you aligned with it. You stopped begging, you started being. Being love is very different than seeking love. When you are being love, you are no longer trying to extract it from others. You are radiating it from your center. You are becoming the source. And the irony of this shift is that the very love you once chased begins to find you naturally, effortlessly, not because you finally became enough, but because you finally stopped trying to prove that you weren't. There are no conditions to divine love. It doesn't ask for credentials. It doesn't check your history. It doesn't care about the mistakes you've made or the scars you carry. In fact, it whispers, come exactly as you are. You've always been enough. And if that voice has grown faint in your life, it's not because it left, it's because you stopped listening. You started tuning in to the loud noise of the world instead of the quiet truth of the soul. But that voice, that sacred whisper of wholeness, it's still there, beneath the pain, beneath the story, beneath the masks and roles and desperate attempts to be loved. It's waiting for you to return to yourself, to stop performing and start remembering, to stop begging and start becoming, to stop chasing and finally rest in the love that never left. Let this be the moment you return to your own heart. Not as a concept, not as an affirmation, but as a lived experience. Let this be the breath where you stop negotiating your worth and start honoring your divinity. You are not the broken pieces someone walked away from. You are not the rejection that stung or the silence that haunted you. You are the soul who survived, the one who still believes even after everything in love. And that belief, it's not naive, it's sacred. It means you haven't given up on the truth. It means you are still connected to your source, no matter how distant you've felt. So do not mourn the love that didn't stay. Celebrate the wisdom it left behind. Do not mourn the ones who couldn't see you. Honor the clarity they gave you. Every closed door was a redirection. Every unanswered call was an invitation to call yourself home. And perhaps the most tender truth of all is this: you don't need to be healed before you are worthy of love. You don't need to be finished to be held. You don't need to be perfect to be embraced. You simply need to be present with yourself, to stop abandoning yourself emotionally every time discomfort rises, to sit beside your own wounds and not treat them like problems to be fixed, but like stories waiting to be understood. That is how you begin to give yourself the love you've been begging others to give you. Not with force, not with performance, but with presence. Presence is the medicine the soul has been craving. Not attention, not validation, not another text from someone whose love is a currency of confusion. What you're yearning for is to feel at home inside your own being, to walk into the rooms of your heart and not feel like a trespasser, to no longer flinch from your own gaze. When you choose to become emotionally present with yourself, when you say, I see you, I hear you, I won't leave you, that is when the begging ends. Because you are no longer empty, you are finally home. And when you are home within, the world stops feeling like a battlefield. People stop being enemies or saviors. They just become mirrors. And you begin to recognize that the ones who withheld their love were simply reflecting the love you had not yet fully claimed for yourself. They weren't the source of your pain. They were the spotlight on your hidden beliefs. The real ache was never their rejection. It was your own silent agreement that you deserved it. You do not deserve crumbs. You do not deserve to be almost loved, nearly chosen, conditionally embraced. The love you give yourself must be a feast, not a ration. It must be unconditional, not because you've never faltered, but because your soul has never ceased to be whole. The ego is the one that counts flaws and keeps score. But your soul, it only knows how to love without hesitation. It only knows how to pour, not barter. And when you align with that part of yourself, you stop participating in relationships that require you to shrink in order to stay. To give yourself love is to reclaim your spiritual authorship. It is to take the pen back from the hands of fear and begin rewriting the script you've been performing. A script that said you had to earn your place. That said you were lovable only when quiet, only when pretty, only when small, only when useful. But the soul doesn't work that way. The soul says, you are loved when you are messy. You are loved when you're lost. You are loved when you forget. You are loved, period. And that period is everything. It is the end of the search. It is the exhale after years of holding your breath. It is the stillness that returns when the storm of self-rejection finally passes. Because all the chasing, all the pleasing, all the pretending, it was never love. It was survival. It was the desperate strategy of a soul that forgot it was already whole. But once you remember, once you taste the peace of no longer needing to be anyone but who you are, you will wonder why you ever searched anywhere else. There is no healing more powerful than becoming your own safe place. No relationship more sacred than the one you nurture with yourself. Not out of ego, but out of devotion. Not out of isolation, but out of integration. When you hold space for yourself, the world holds space for you. When you stop abandoning your own needs, you stop tolerating the emotional starvation that once felt normal. And what once felt like love, the highs, the lows, the confusion will no longer move you. Because truth is quiet, love is calm, and you will have become both. And it is from this state of inner union that you begin to attract a new kind of relationship, not based on dependency, not fueled by fear, not designed to fill your emptiness, but one that mirrors the wholeness you've cultivated. One that doesn't complete you, but complements you. One that doesn't distract from your healing, but dances with it. And until you've met yourself in that way, every connection will be a test of your worth rather than a celebration of your being. So when you find yourself begging, stop, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what am I trying to get that I am not giving? What story have I resurrected that says I must chase to be cherished? And in that moment, forgive yourself. Forgive the years you spent knocking on closed doors. Forgive the times you whispered, please love me, to people who didn't even know how to love themselves. Forgive the inner child who didn't know better. She was only doing what she thought was required to survive. But now you know better. And with knowing comes freedom. With freedom comes responsibility. The responsibility to choose yourself, not in defiance of others, but in remembrance of your truth. You are not here to be rescued. You are here to be revealed. You are not incomplete. You are in the process of unbecoming everything that taught you otherwise. The journey was never about finding love. It was about remembering that you are it. There is a softness that returns when you stop begging, a peace that rises when you let go of the need to be needed. It doesn't mean you stop loving others. It means you love them from fullness, not from hunger, from overflow, not from lack. You become the tree that no longer chases the rain because you've discovered the river within. You stop waiting for someone else to come and water your roots. You begin to bloom from the inside out. And this inner bloom cannot be undone by rejection. It does not wither when others walk away. Because it is not fed by attention. It is not sustained by performance. It is nourished by presence, self-compassion, and divine truth. This kind of love is immune to drama, immune to manipulation, immune to the games that once held you captive. Because once you have met yourself in your own heart, no counterfeit connection can satisfy you again. Let the ache remind you, not of what you've lost, but of what you are ready to claim. Let the loneliness guide you, not to desperation, but to deeper intimacy with yourself. Every longing is a messenger. Every trigger, a teacher. Every disappointment, an initiation. They are not signs that love has left you. They are signs that your soul is calling you back. Back to the place where love is not earned, but embodied. Keep breathing with this rhythm of remembrance. Let each breath be a prayer. I am worthy. I am whole. I am already love. Let that be the mantra that rewrites your story. Not because you're trying to convince yourself, but because deep down you already know. You've always known. It's just that now you're ready to live it. And now, as you settle into this sacred remembrance, something profound begins to shift inside you. Not loud, not sudden, but as gentle as a sunrise washing away the long night. You begin to see that every unmet expectation, every heartbreak, every silence that once screamed abandonment was never about them. It was always the universe whispering, return to yourself. They cannot give you what you are still withholding from your own heart. And in that holy returning, you start to listen differently. You begin to hear the sound of your soul, not the noise of your fears, not the echoes of your childhood pain, but the quiet, unshakable voice of your eternal self. The voice that doesn't yell, but guides. The voice that says, you don't need to chase them, you need to find you. You don't need more attention, you need more alignment. And when you begin to trust that voice more than the fear, more than the history, more than the wounds, you stop clinging to what was never meant to stay. You see, love is not something to hoard. It's something to become. And becoming it means you have to surrender your addiction to being chosen. It means you have to lay down your fear that being alone means being unworthy. Solitude is not emptiness. It's sacred space. It's the inner temple where your truest self finally speaks uninterrupted. And in that space, there is no desperation, only devotion. No groveling, only grace. You begin to notice that your peace no longer flinches in someone else's absence. That your joy no longer rises and falls with how much affection they offer. You become unshakable, not because you've hardened, but because you've healed. You've rooted yourself in truth so deep that the winds of rejection no longer uproot your spirit. You walk away from what doesn't align, not in anger, but in reverence. Because now you love yourself too much to remain where your soul is shrinking. And this is when the universe begins to meet you differently. Not because it changed, but because you did. You raised your vibration from please choose me to I choose me. From I hope I'm enough for them to I am enough. And they are either aligned or not. And the irony is, the more you no longer need to be loved in a certain way, the more love flows to you in the purest ways. Not because you demanded it, but because you've become it. This is the divine law of frequency. You attract what you embody. When you vibrate from fullness, you repel what drains you and magnetize what uplifts you. And love, real love, cannot resist a soul who no longer begs. Because begging is the energy of separation. It says, you are my source. But love, real, divine, conscious love, is found in the energy of union. It says, I am my source, and in that I can meet you as a whole being. You no longer need to be rescued. You are the rescue. You no longer need to be validated. You are the validation. You no longer need to be seen by another in order to see yourself. This is freedom. This is emotional sovereignty. This is what happens when you stop looking outward and begin living inward. When you stop chasing illusions and start anchoring in your own sacred truth. And in this truth, you will walk into rooms differently. You'll speak without shrinking. You'll love without losing yourself. You'll hold space for others without abandoning your own. You will no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. You will no longer interpret mixed signals as a challenge to be deciphered. You will simply recognize misalignment and walk away, not from ego, but from clarity. You will no longer fear being alone. Because now you understand, being alone with your soul is the most holy company you'll ever keep. The silence is not a void, it's a doorway. A portal back to your presence, and in that presence, miracles begin to unfold. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you are no longer living from a fractured place. You are living from essence. Let your life become an offering, not to win love, but to express it. Let your joy be unconditional. Let your boundaries be sacred. Let your standards be written in light, not in desperation. You are not hard to love. You are hard to manipulate. You are not intimidating. You are simply no longer abandoning yourself for the sake of being chosen. And that is what makes your energy unshakable, not because you are guarded, but because you are finally grounded. And when the past comes knocking, and it will, you don't need to answer with fear. You can open the door with grace and say, I no longer live there. When the old patterns whisper, you are too much, too difficult, too this or that, you'll respond, I am exactly as I am meant to be, and I am not for shrinking anymore. You'll begin to carry yourself like someone who knows the divine lives within them, because it does. Then let us now complete the journey, not by ending it, but by coming home to where it always began, within you. There is a kind of peace that doesn't arrive like lightning, but like the soft return of your own breath. It doesn't scream or demand applause. It simply settles in deep, sacred, and certain. That peace is what happens when you stop trying to earn your place on this earth. When you stop performing for love that was never meant to be bartered in the first place. When you stop trying to become lovable and realize you already are. You are not a project. You are not an open wound to be endlessly patched up by others. You are not a mistake waiting to be corrected by someone else's approval. You are a living miracle, the breath of God made visible in human form. And the moment you reclaim that truth, the moment you stand in it, not as a concept, but as an embodied reality, you stop begging for love because you finally remember that love was never outside of you. Let this moment be a resurrection. Let it be the moment your old story dies, the story that said you had to chase, perform, or be chosen to matter. Let it be the moment you stop searching for someone else to see your light and instead become the one who holds it with reverence. You no longer need to plead for recognition. You simply need to recognize yourself. You are not here to be filled. You are here to overflow. You are not here to be defined by someone's affection. You are here to radiate your own. You are not here to shrink in the presence of others. You are here to expand in the presence of truth. And truth is this: you were never broken. You were becoming. You were never too much. You were overflowing. You were never hard to love. You were waiting to love yourself first. You have not failed because someone walked away. You have awakened. You have remembered. And in this remembrance, you no longer settle for scraps. You no longer distort yourself to fit the mold of another's limited vision. You become the vessel of love that pours without needing to be refilled by others. Because you have tapped into the infinite well within the source, the silence, the sacred center of your being. And yes, love may still arrive from others. In fact, it will. But it will not arrive because you begged for it. It will arrive because you no longer did, because you aligned, because you embodied, because you finally surrendered the need to be completed, and in doing so, became whole. This is the power of spiritual self-love. It does not isolate you. It connects you to everything. It does not harden you. It frees you. It does not make you superior. It makes you true. When you walk in this kind of love, you become an invitation not for people to fix you, but to meet you as they are. You stop searching for the one and start becoming the one for yourself. And in doing so, you become a mirror for others to remember themselves too. That is the ripple of self-love. It is not selfish. It is sacred. It is not indulgent. It is awakening. You teach the world how to treat you by how you treat yourself. And the world begins to respond not to your words, but to your frequency. That frequency says, I am enough. I am whole. I am no longer available for anything less than truth. And the truth is, you no longer chase what you are, you embody it. You no longer explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer try to resurrect connections that were assignments, not destinies. You no longer suffer for the sake of keeping others comfortable. You rise, you rest, you remember. And as you remember, let this be your prayer, not a plea, but a proclamation. I release the story that I must earn love. I release the lie that I am only worthy when needed. I release the identity that was shaped by rejection. I return to my soul. I return to my truth. I return to the knowing that I am love itself. From this day forward, may you walk not in search of love, but in the radiance of it. May you no longer settle for connections that cost you your peace. May you become the sanctuary you once searched for. And may you always remember, the love you were begging for was never in their hands. It was always in yours. And so it is. And so you are.